Well, greetings and salutations to the 310 tribe, wherever you might be tonight. We have a special guest. Tonight's going to be Vinn Dogg. We're going to be talking about the collapse of Western civilization and all of that fun stuff. But before we do, just a couple of admin notes. The program I was doing with Lauren and Matt on Wednesday night on her channel is going to be postponed until the 4th of June. So I'm going home on vacation the 23rd. I'll be gone for about a week, a little over a week. And so the next thing that I do after this Wednesday, after this Wednesday, it'll be the 4th of June. So I'll be offline for about a week and a half. So um, with that said, Wednesday night I am going to set aside some time to do Q&A. So whatever we don't get to tonight, because I have to get up super early in the morning, so I won't be too late tonight. Maybe an hour and a half. But tomorrow. Or not tomorrow. Tomorrow's Tuesday, right? Yeah, today. I don't even know what day it is. Today's Monday. No, yeah, today's Monday. Tomorrow's Tuesday, Wednesday. So 2 days from now, we'll do the Q&A. Sorry, I don't even know what day it is anymore. But with that said, I want to bring on somebody you guys all know and love, my good friend, brother in Christ, Vinn Dogg.
Brother
How are
Pete, it's
you
good to
doing?
be here. How you
Yes,
doing,
man. It's
bro?
good to see you, man. How have you been?
Good, man. Good. Super blessed, man. Um, I was watching the show with you. What was it, Patrick Wood and all the guys? I was like, wow, this is good. It took me 2 days to watch the whole 2 hours.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of information to try and cover and put out, and each of us, we could each talk for 2 hours on a lot of those subjects. But it really is. It's happening so fast, and we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. But
Hmm.
um, yeah, that was a good time. I typically don't like roundtables because I just I like a conversation, where it's just two people talking. And I do like the idea that I do like being on the I don't get me wrong, I like to be on there, the roundtables with these guys, but, I do wish it was more of like the technology would allow it to make it more of a conversation, like we're just kinda flowing in a like we're sitting around a room drinking coffee and talking about stuff, and that's, I think, what most people wanna hear is what goes on behind, like, if we're at a conference and we're all hanging out in the green room or whatever, that's what are we talking about? So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the fun stuff. But yeah. But yeah, roundtables, I get invited to a few. I'll go to them every once in a while. I'll do John's, and then I'll do Black Swans every once in a while. But typically, I don't typically do a roundtable. I don't know. What do you feel about them? Do you like
Um,
them? Hate
I
them?
think they're cool to watch, but for me to be on one, absolutely not.
it
uh, that'd be a stumbler for me.
Yeah, it's hard because you're waiting to talk, and then somebody will say something really interesting, and you want to comment on it, but you got to wait, and then somebody else speaks, and by the time it comes back to you, that we're 3 different conversations ahead into something else,
Yeah,
So,
train of thought gone.
and I'm too polite to interrupt. I don't like to interrupt people. When
Yeah.
Tyler and I were doing videos a lot a couple of years ago, he's like, "Dude, I'll just talk." He goes, "You gotta interrupt me," it's like, "All right," but I feel weird interrupting people, I don't know, but,
Mhm.
anyways, we'll get going here. We'll do the topic tonight, the collapse of Western civilization. I heard Glenn Beck talking about this morning, but I've written about this a number of times over the years, probably about a half a dozen times. I've used the same quote I'm about to read from Sir John Glubb, and I've used that probably the same amount of times, But let me read through it. It's just in an outline form, and then I want to get your thoughts on it. And if there's something interesting, just we'll earmark that and we'll go to kind of pick up where that is. And if maybe you got some interesting ideas or thoughts when we get to certain areas. So Sir John Glubb, for those who don't know, is a was a or he was a British soldier, scholar, historian. He outlined a theory of the rise and fall of empires in his epic book, the Fate of Empires and Search for Survival. And after studying 13 major empires across 3,000 years, he observed a recurring seven-stage cycle in the life of civilizations. So here's the outline. So and this has been done a couple different ways by different scholars. There's another Scottish scholar that has one, the cycle of nations is very similar. But his writes here, it says the age of empires, or the age of pioneers, I'm sorry. The second stage is the age of conquest. The next stage is the age of commerce, then the age of affluence, the age of intellect, the age of decadence, and then the age of decline and collapse. So, for the purposes of this, briefly, I'll just say, I pretty much agree with the idea that many have. The age of pioneers is talking about the time from about 1620 through about the time of our revolution. So from the Pilgrims to the time that we fought the British, won, declared ourselves a nation, is that age of pioneers. And obviously, people began to expand out west. So this is kind of the opening, the starting of a cycle. And then the next is the age of conquest. And I put this on here from 1776 through 1945. And that would include everything from the organization of the colonies or the establishment of the colonies, this idea of manifest destiny that we're going to spread and keep moving west. Even the Civil War, in the way of keeping the Union together. So there was a long, long period of time when we were expanding and growing as a nation. And then there's the age of commerce, and I liken this to the second and third industrial revolutions, which is around the time of the beginning of I mean, the roots of it start, like in the previous age, but like from the second industrial revolution going forward, that was kind of how manufacturing was done in America, in the world, for the better part of until about the 1980s, when robots, how do you say that word? Robotization. Uh, Anyways, that word. You're putting robots and replacing people with these machines that were doing like factory works for cars in Detroit and Toyota and all these other plants and stuff. But really, it's from the 1940s, right after World War II. We're the last country standing. Europe's in ruin. Russia's in ruin. China's in ruin. Japan's in ruin. A lot of other places in the world were attacked and damaged, but the U.S., with the exception of Pearl Harbor, was largely left intact. And we also had most of the world's gold at that time because of Bretton Woods and all of the deals we had done with Europe to sell them beans and bullets and blankets, and they gave us their gold. So that age of commerce covered really about till the 1970s. And in there, there's also, in a lot of these ages, they overlap with each other. There's not a clear, like, not necessarily a real clear breaking point. There's always overlap with these things that carry over from previous. And then the age of affluence would be like the 80s and the 90s. You had the oil, Reaganomics, you had the .com. You remember when everything online was just like blowing up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it was a time of materialism and nihilism, especially in the 90s when the grunge movement came in and kind of took over. Everything was kind of like, oh, what does it matter? And, that was just kind of the mindset from the 90s. But then you have the age of intellects. And I put on, I mean, really, we've had intellects throughout most of the cycle of, every generation's got their own. But this is really where you start seeing the experts and the elite coming out and kind of their opinion, their position trumps everybody else's, and we have to just listen to the experts, and we have to. And I don't know about you, we're about the same age, I guess, but like for me, it just seemed like when you went to high school, the expected thing to do was you either went into the military or you went to college. That was kind of the two options. I mean, some people went straight to work, but like at least where I grew up, it was kind of just expected to just go on to college somewhere.
Yeah, you're right. It was kind of expected. Like, it's like military, college, or in my family, it was number three, get a job. So, we got jobs.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's
And then
pretty much what it was.
it was. And then but we put so much onus on these degrees and these certificates and these titles and stuff that everybody has them now. Like it used to be that if you had a high school degree, that was good. I mean, you were educated, you could get your foot in a door most places. And
Yeah,
then it was like,
diploma.
oh, you need to have a bachelor's degree, and then it was a master's degree, and then it was a doctorate's degree, and it just keeps going up and up and up. And now people are doctors, and you're like, are you a medical doctor, like a real doctor, or are you like a doctor of English or a doctor of literature or whatever? Uh, and then the last two stages, the age of decadence, I would put down from about the time Obama took office. You had the rise of the alphabet mafia, wokeism, BLM, Me Too, all these different movements that have turned the culture upside down. It's defined by a decline in civic virtue, responsibility, excessive wealth, leisure. It breeds this self centeredness, and we are a very, very narcissistic and self absorbed nation these days. Loss of moral fiber, weakening institutions, immigration without integration. So there's no assimilation for these immigrants that are sneaking in or coming in. And then dependency on government. I mean, I'd say 50% of or 60% of the American population is dependent on the government for something. And then you have the entertainment and sexual permissiveness that dominates the culture. Frivolity. I cannot say words tonight. Narcissism, decline in birth rate, rise in pessimism. Values are hedonism, cynicism, and entitlement. I mean, tell me that doesn't speak about this day and age that we live in. And here's where Glenn Beck was really focused on, and I'm going to turn it over to you on this, is the age of decline and collapse. And so I'm going to start this from 2016 because what it's marked by is political instability. There's a breakdown in the political systems, loss of unity, sense of purpose. Um, this is where really the big thing here is a loss of trust. We don't trust the institutions anymore. We don't trust the colleges. We don't trust the government. We don't even necessarily trust the Trump government or them. I mean, for a lot of different issues. And so everything is becoming, it's either a choice between tribalism, where we all kind of just get in our own little groups, or anarchy, or where lawlessness starts to break out. And I think we're seeing now that things are starting to break down. So I've been rambling on and on. I'm going to hand it over to you for the next 45 minutes. Go. Yeah. Just kidding. You're muted. Here. Well,
Can you hear me now?
yeah, yeah, I got you. I got you.
Okay, yeah, that was weird. That was some weird
Oh,
stuff right there.
so
Okay,
what do you think, man?
so how you said about 2016. I wanted to
Yeah,
roll back to uh, how it all really unfolded back in 1962, because you know how you and I were talking about the 60s.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
How they took God out of the classroom, that
Yep.
Supreme Court ruling. And I believe that was like the real true essence of how the United States of America was going to have a super downfall. And we see it right now, right? Look at everything around us. In the 70s, there was what, Roe v. Wade in 1973. Um,
Yep.
and what was it in the 60s, that free love, sexual revolution, all this stuff that just started happening, that just started spiraling the country out of control. And what happens? And we have an influence on the world with everything. And so
Yeah.
when they started following American culture in different places around the world, I believe that's when God's like, oh man, this isn't good. So I'm just going to let them have at it. And so I believe that America was given over to itself, like right then and there.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a good point. Certainly, I think, like, if you were to put everything under a microscope, we could apply his category our categories to the way that the U.S. has, risen to power and then maintained it, and then now we're in the declining stages of it. And certainly when you look at things like, um, and we could even, I mean, we could keep going back and back and back, but I think you make a good starting point there with the Supreme Court decision to kick God out of the schools. And then, from there, the sexual revolution, the counterculture movement, the drugs, sex, drugs, rock and roll. And then by 73, we have Roe v. Wade. And so it's the problem with our system is that it's geared towards, it's designed to the maximum degree to support the idea that a person is innocent until proven guilty. And I know people are saying, why is that a problem? It's not a problem in the design. It's not the problem in the intent. It is a problem in that it allows evil people to game the system to such a degree that it is, uh, you know, somebody can sue McDonald's for spilling hot coffee on them. Like it's like to that
Yeah.
level of ridiculousness. And certainly, we have one of our fellow watchmen who's being frivolously sued for speaking about the soon coming of the Lord's return. And to me, obviously, his case. He's got a good lawyer, and his case is going to get thrown out. And that guy that's pressing these charges is going to have to pay the legal fees, and that's just going to cost him. But the point is that we're to this point now where this is like open hostility against God, and it's
Hmm.
everything is being in counterculture, right? Or not even the counterculture; it is the mainstream culture, like Little Nas X, the whole 666 shoes, all of any kind of NFL, Super Bowl, the Grammys, any kind of those major award ceremonies where they have a live performance. It always goes in one direction. It's
Yeah.
either overly sexualized or it's overly occultized, or or some type of satanic or pagan type of overtones to it. So why do you think people feel so brazen now? Like where is that coming from, do you think?
I think because number one, the church is not as strong as it used to be. So there's no like morality anymore. It's just like, okay, I'm gonna do what I do, and it's all about self. It's a self-loathing society. I believe that that's where we're at. And so that's one of the main reasons why everything is so brazenly happening this way is because people with morals, it's very far and few, or number two, a lot of folks are just really quiet and not saying anything. They're like, well, it's all going to end anyway. So let's just, stay quiet, be about our business, and, just, wait for the Lord to come. And I'm like, that's kind of like the wrong approach. Like, we need to have that type of influence on society while we're still here, because we are the restraining force until God says that's it and He snatches us out of here. But I just believe that a lot of folks, they'll say it's all wrong, but they're afraid to speak up, and even leaders on the pulpits are afraid to speak out about it, or sometimes they'll just capitulate to it.
Yeah, it's the if you try to stand against the tide these days, it's you're gonna get run over, and
Hmm.
we constantly are being run over. And I was thinking about this today because I was looking at some jobs that I could possibly use that I would stay in Texas, and one of them was for a writer. And I'm thinking like, could I really apply for this job as a writer, which I could clearly do, even technical writing or any of the other stuff I can do. And I can't use my website, I can't use my books, I can't use any of the things I've written about because to them, this would be a government state job.
Hmm.
They would like, "Yeah, we can't have you." They're just not gonna go there because they don't want anything to do with the rapture, the second coming, like, that is just too extreme for them, like and so I have the ton of experience, I can't use it, and so I know that, we aren't we aren't being persecuted in America like other countries are yet. However, there is a very strong soft persecution, and it goes back to the time when God was kicked out of school.
Hmm.
The point is that the reason why is that they took advantage, that these evil, wicked people, like I can't remember her name, the atheist um, that even provoked that case to go to court.
Mm.
Um, she was a very vile person. She was murdered. I think her and her son were both, and daughter were all murdered by some people that they were. This was years later, but somebody in the chat can remember their names
Yeah,
for
please
me.
bring that up for us because we're trying to remember that right now.
Yeah, O'Hare, Madeline Murray O'Hare. That's what it is.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so she was murdered back in 2000 or the late 90s, I think. Anyways, but you know, she took advantage of this thing that is was that made was part of our culture. The main culture back then was this thing called WASP, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant work ethic.
Mm,
You were a man, you worked, you didn't complain,
that's right.
you just sucked it up and did it. Even when you came back from war and you had all kind of mental issues, like you never said anything about it. You just did your work, you know, put your shoulder to the grind and go. And that also transpired over into the pulpits where we don't want to be a burden on anybody. We don't want to, we don't want to, we just want to go along to get along. And, you know, it's a very polite, type of, um, ethos that people adopt. And you bought into this lie from the people that said you can't talk about these things in polite company. You can't talk about God or government, you know, politics in polite
Hmm.
company. So people just quit talking about it. And then they bought into the idea that you can't talk about it from the pulpit. And so all of those things, like it just it kind of because they took advantage of our politeness and of our respect for a civil society and the law and things. That's why I think the downfall of our Constitution is what James, I think it was James Madison or John Adams said, that our Constitution was only written for a righteous and like a religious people. It's
Hmm.
not going to work for any other kind of people. And so the wicked people are gaming it like crazy. And so now there is this counter push to kind of embrace patriotism again and go, but I think it's a little too little, too late. I don't know. What do you think on that?
Yeah, I think we're like a little bit far off of the cliff for that. Um, I just remember this quote when somebody asked Benjamin Franklin, "Hey, so how does something like this survive?" He goes, "Well, either we stand together or we hang separately." And it looks like the country is like really dangling separately in different pockets. And like you said, the politeness got taken advantage of, and that's why people are just running over folks like us, like Mack trucks, because nobody else is willing to say, "Hey, you know what? We need to have some type of moral compass here because this is wrong." And like you said, the
Yeah.
Constitution was built upon the principles of God, right? And that's been taken out of context. People like to use, they're enforcing this thing, oh, separation of church and state. I'm like, folks, that was just a letter. And and people are just like, oh, well, we shouldn't just dabble in it because, separation of church and state. I'm like, that was a letter. The Constitution was actually written to protect the church. If you think about it, it was to protect the rights of the people that God has given us.
Yeah. Well, even that to that extent, as we become a very, you know, multicultural society,
Hmm.
if you want to say that you know, and it does, the First Amendment protects the freedom of speech and religion or how you worship. But you've also got folks that come in and say, "Well, I'm a Satanist. I want to worship Satan on the town square, and that requires that I put up this giant Baphomet statue." And so people are gonna always they're gonna always look for a weak spot, a place that they can manipulate. And that goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden. That's why Satan went after Eve and not Adam.
Hmm.
Um, And so that my point is that they're always going to work that system. They're always going to try and game it and say, "Look, I'm following the law, blah blah blah." But it's always to some wicked extent. And
Yeah.
one generation bans it, then the next one kind of tolerates it, and then the next one embraces it, and then the next one mandates it. Like
Hmm.
whatever it is, whatever kind of lifestyle or deviancy it is, that's
Hmm.
the cycles that they go through. They just go through this idea of normalization. So you and I, we could go back to the '80s and watch '80s movies and see, or even like late '70s shows that kind of put like the transgendered guy or transvestite or whatever in kind of some
Yeah.
kind of humorous, like you remember that Klinger, was it Klinger or Klingon, Corporal Klinger, yeah, from
Yeah.
MASH,
Finger.
was
Yeah.
always dressed in a dress trying to get a crazy eval or whatever, kicked out of
Yes.
crazy.
Yes.
But
Yeah. And so,
it's
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I just, they use that idea, Mr. not Mr. Mom, but the one Robin Williams is in as Mrs. Doubtfire. All of these kind of where men dress up as women as kind of a joke, and it's humor, it's comedy, and there's no harm in it. And then boom, it just comes right out after that, like, yeah, we want your kids, like
Hmm.
we want to read stories to your kids in the library about, and just they come out looking like just
Yeah.
freakazoids. I don't
Yeah.
know, man. Like there's some
Yeah.
crazy looking ones.
Yeah. And so the reason why that was done because they said, hey, we have to figure out a way to desensitize people
That's
to
it.
make them think, oh yeah, it's just funny. We're just having fun. But
Yeah.
this is the form of predictive programming to tell you, hey, this is going to have to be accepted in society eventually.
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and that's and
Absolutely.
that's where we're at right now. And so the whole thing with Mrs. Doubtfire and like you said, Klinger from MASH. I mean, in the '80s, man, us growing up in the '80s, man, they were really pushing that stuff hard in TV shows. You got to
Hmm.
tolerate these people. We have to conform so that they can be a part of society. I was, it was like they were really trying to just like vanilla everything. It was
Yeah.
it's crazy. And look where we're at in 2025, and I always tell people the devil is in for the long game because he knows that his time is running short. So his minions are going to put in that long game work, and they're still doing it right to this day. I mean, look, the long game went from, the prince of the airwaves, where I worked in radio, to ensuing itself upon, television, ensuing itself inside the government, ensuing itself inside the universities, ensuing itself inside the church. Now that now that one's a huge one. I mean, look at Andy Stanley. He's way
Mhm.
out there right now.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I forget who said this, but there was a saying, and I'm trying not to butcher it. It's like, um, culture is downstream from education, and then politics is downstream from culture.
Hmm.
And so, if you look at what the academics have been putting out since the 1920s, since the socialists left Germany, the communists left Germany, and they went to New York and founded their own Frankfurt School or Frankfurt Institute, which began to infect all these major universities and seminaries with
Hmm.
this Marxist ideology. All of that, I mean, this stuff has been going on for decades and decades, and
Hmm.
it was always on the outside. It was always the fringe, and now it's the mainstream. It was for the last 4 years running this government. Like I mean,
Yeah.
just the
Oh, oh.
lunatics they have in there. But man, it's all coming apart. And the big problem that I think Trump has now is that nobody has any faith left in the institutions. They don't have any faith left in the because now I know Doge is trying to do a good thing by exposing all the corruption and stopping the bleeding, but at the same time, every time they go in and bust some, $35 billion scam that was funneling money to like the Taliban or to whatever, and who knows where it was going, and all these people were grifting off of it. It's just how do you you can stop that, you can put an end to it, you can fire those people, you can recoup some of the money, but that trust is gone. People
Yeah.
have been thinking, "I've been paying into taxes my entire life. I've been warned about scammers on the phone trying to scam me out of money," and the scammers let me side rabbit trail real quick. That video I posted on or that channel I post on Telegram,
Yeah.
man, you guys have got to start watching those shows because these guys are getting very, very crafty in how they trick people, and they target specifically they target their key demographic is anybody over 65 because they
Yep.
know you don't know technology like the younger generation.
Hmm.
So you may have a laptop or some type of electronic device and you're just not it's not doing what it's supposed to do. Man, just restart it. Turn power off, power it back on. That almost fixes everything electronic. And
Yes.
that doesn't fix everything, but 9 times out of 10, if you just restart your computer or restart your printer or restart your whatever, unplug it, plug it back in, whatever, it's gonna fix the problems. And that's a lot way a lot of those things are designed. But yeah, so it's just like, man, it is I don't know. I'll keep rambling on. You go.
Well, number one, technology is so far advanced right now. Um, there are things that the average person in public hasn't seen yet. So I believe that the whole thing with technology, you know how they say they're going to have like these, well, they still have when they have deep fakes, all these videos, and the AI has gotten really good. I mean, you can't tell if it's real or fake now some of the time. So I believe that that the deception is about to grow even larger right now. And like you said, with the scammers, man, they are going after the elderly, and it's kind of sad because they don't know very much about, like you said, about turning on computers, rebooting, um, and also their phones. So that's the thing that I have always learned because I wanted to know everything about computers. I want to know like how that chip on the inside, connects to, the actual flux capacitor of the
Yeah.
automation system. So
Yep.
that way, like when I reach that age, I'm like, sorry, buddy, you can't fool me. But I'm praying that you and I don't have to go all the way into our 60s, that God just says, all right, I'm going to snatch you guys out of here real quick.
Oh man.
You
Yeah.
know, because I really don't want the church to be here for the next 20 years, to be honest with you, because man, things are about to get crazy, bro. I
Do
mean, think about
you
last week, what happened when, they have white horses in the Middle East, you know, escorting Donald Trump's motorcade. That was crazy, man. And I'm like, dude, this guy's dealing with people that did stuff to our country
Yeah.
in the early 2000s. And you know what I'm talking about. And
It's
it's wild, man.
I think a lot of people don't understand Trump so I was talking to who was I talking to the other day? I was explaining this, but I think it was just on the conversation, but I like okay, if you boil Trump down to his essence of like who he is on the inside, from his upbringing, from his parents' influence, from how he was a parent, and looking at his kids and how his kids have turned out.
Hmm.
Um, he's a good man. Like he's a good moral man. Okay, there's stories after stories after stories where he's helped people, random people, never even wanted any credit for it, and they're coming out years later, or they talk about it at the time, but like
Oh
he
yeah.
just does it, like, because I think deep down he has a true I'm not saying he's an angel or a saint or anything like that. I know he's been married a bunch of times. I'm not saying he's squeaky clean. I'm just saying if you look at what he cares about, he cares about right and wrong. It's pretty simple for him. But there's a other side of him that's all business. And so he recognizes that taking a unsolvable situation and introducing business into it and the prospects of making a lot of money out of the deal tends to allow calmer heads to prevail in a lot of
Hmm.
instances.
Hmm.
It's like, well, I won't use this example, but I'll just say that there are certain ways that a woman, your significant other, you could be having an argument and she could quickly diffuse that argument with just the way that she looks at you or she
Yes,
kisses you,
I've
hugs
had
you,
that
whatever.
happen.
And so business and making money has that almost that same effect on leaders around the world.
Hmm.
They know Trump is successful. I mean, look, they're watching everything we've watched for the last 9 years. They've seen him go under investigation. They were, the media ridiculed him for nonstop. They, put him under these impeachments, these investigations. You had the 2020
Hmm.
election. You had
Hmm.
all of this stuff since then, the assassination attempts and things. And they want to deal with this guy because they recognize him for what he is. He is an icon. If and I know people hate when I say this, Vin. People hate when I say this, but if we were here, or if the world was, you know, like it is today, but 100 years from now, he would be as iconic as a figure of history as Abraham Lincoln or George Washington. He is that, or like, Winston Churchill or Gandhi, Martin
Hmm.
Luther King. Some of these folks that have lived that are larger than life, that have, they're forever etched into the annals of history, that they will be remembered. My point
Hmm.
is that Trump is like that, and they see him like that. And when I was in Saudi Arabia in 2017, 2018, or 2016, 2017,
Oh, you were
they
out there then, huh?
yeah, they when he came the first time, man, oh my gosh, he is a rock star in the Middle East. People don't understand that. Like, he is a rock star. They see him like a real man. They see him as a real man, and that's what they value. That's what this idea of wasta is. Wasta is having all your cool points. It's being like the man. That is like what wasta means. And so they a man puts that above everything over there, almost even over his faith, definitely over his family and wives and stuff. But it is a man. That is who you are. That defines you as a man. Is that wasta? And so they see him as like the epitome of that. Like, he is Midas right now, and everything he touches, it turns to gold or whatever. So they want in on that. And so he's going to take advantage of that and
Hmm.
use that to try and build this Sunni coalition to pressure Iran into totally abandoning their weaponization of the nuclear facilities and all that. And
Hmm.
if that doesn't work, and we know it's not going to work, the last option they have is war, you know?
Hmm.
And so
And I don't
I
think
think
Iran wants that.
good.
I don't
Go
think
ahead.
Iran wants that very much, to be honest with you.
You don't think he what?
I don't think Iran would want that because that'd be very bad for them.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
don't they don't want it. Well, they kind of do. And what Glenn Beck had brought up this morning, I thought was pretty interesting idea. But the Twelvers are kind of the same mindset. The Iranians that are these Twelvers that want to bring about global chaos, so that the Mahdi
Hmm.
will step forward. I mean, they are very much in line with the same folks like Alexander Dugin, the guy that's leading Russia, the globalist out of the World Economic Forum, the globalist out of corporate America and the corporations around the world, and the Roman Catholic Church is globalist. There's all of these conflicting ideas, or
Hmm.
conflicting agendas going forward about what's gonna. They see America teetering. We're on the edge. We're about to collapse. They see that. So
Hmm.
everybody is jockeying for position to be the best prepositioned for when the U.S. collapses. So I can just see that. I can see how that's being worked,
Hmm.
and even things like our NATO, this idea of divorcing NATO, that would never have been discussed outside of Trump, because
Right.
Trump sees things as they are and like, hey, we're getting ripped off here.
Yeah.
And they're not even they're sovereign countries. We're still under the Westphalian order since 1648, which is its own sovereign entity, and no other nation has a right to mess with it. And if they do, that's a declaration of war. But that whole idea of the Westphalian idea of the sovereign state, that's going away. And so we
Hmm.
have the collapse of the American world order. That's we're in the decline now, that decline stage of it, and there's no real way to prevent it other than going to some brand new system, which is the central bank digital currencies and a lot of the stuff we talked about on Wednesday at the roundtable.
Right.
Uh, but Alexander Dugin, Putin, Russia, they want a Russian-led world order. The World Economic Forum, they want a, I don't know what they want, some type of global government over everything. You've got the Chinese want to dominate the planet. I mean, everybody wants to rule the world right now. It's just like who's going to be best positioned for when the U.S. collapses, and that's why we see the BRICS. We see nations pulling away from our money because they know that we were like 36 trillion in debt. I mean, that's unsustainable.
And we're not
And I don't
coming
know
out of
what.
that.
No, we're not going to come out the same way. I don't care what Doge does. We even if we don't, or let's say we do. Let's say that we get out of debt and we want to keep the dollar as the world's currency. But the rest of the world's moving on to digital. So we'll be like the last people using paper money. Nobody else is using it. You can't use it anywhere. It's going to be like the Confederate dollars. They're not worth anything
Hmm.
after the Confederacy collapse. So
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah. It's
same
crazy.
prospect for America.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff happening. But um, I want your opinion on this. So, when do you think that the country will totally fall? Will it be right before we're pulled up, or do you think it's going to happen after the rapture?
I tend to think that it's going to happen because of the rapture. I think that we may even see a little bit of America recovering,
Hmm.
and then right when things are starting to look really good, boom, it happens, and that's when the last time people expect it because times are good or they're getting better, and then we're collapsed at that point. Now the nation still exists, and the cities and the highways and the bridges and all the infrastructure that's still going to be here, but our system of government is what's going to end, and that the idea of being ruled by a constitution, that's going to come to an end.
Hmm.
The politicians, the governors of the states, the senators, congressmen, all they'll go down underground into their hidey holes, and they'll wait until a few days until whatever they can muster for like police or law or military can get some kind of control. And they'll start expanding out their footprints from there to regain control. But I wrote a book. Me and friend Toby, we did this book called uh, "The Apocalypse" or "The Apocalypse One Percenters." Like a biker game, but like the bikers, the cartels, the gangs, the mafia, all of these criminal organizations. When the collapse happens, they are going to be the best poised to really dominate everything for a while. And so we talk about a gap in the rapture in the start of the 70th week. Honestly, I don't know how long that gap is, but and even if there is a short gap in terms of what's going on in the Middle East, I think with the United States, that time between when everything falls apart and when something stands back up as some kind of a government system, that may be a
Right.
while. That
Hmm.
that could be a long while, over a year or two, because we don't really play a role, and we're not one of the key players in the last days. We might become some type of a region that is one of the 10 kings, but I don't think that we're going to play any dominant role other than we're resource rich. We have a lot of resources, so people are going to want that.
Right.
And but yeah, I think the collapse happens at the rapture. Just my opinion. I don't think it happens prior to, because so much of the world is tied up with our economy and our dollar. So if we collapse, everybody collapses. It would be catastrophic across and that's why people are trying to divorce themselves from the United States in terms of our money.
Hmm.
But it's still so much of the world still runs on the dollar. The markets, the major corporations, all the major banks and stuff are still using the dollar. So if the dollar goes, then it's everything's gonna fall at that point. So
Yeah, it sounds about right. Because the reason why I bring that up is because there's a lot of movies that talk about all these wars that are going to happen, how certain states are going to unrealistically come together and fight against the government. I think you know which movie I'm talking about. Supposedly
yeah,
Texas is going to band with California. I'm like, no, dude, that's not going to happen. But who knows what's going to happen if we're not here? You know what I'm saying? So there could be some crazy pendulum shifting going on that we're not even seeing yet.
yeah, for sure. And I it's hard for us to not want to see ourselves in the picture. We Americans, because we've been the center. I got like an eyelash in my eye. We've been center stage for so long that to not have the limelight anymore, it's going to be a difficult transition for us. So I think that there could be some. Well, I definitely think there will be some type of collapsing civil war, lawlessness, anarchy, all that kind of stuff is going to break out all over the U.S. And that'll be kind of like that movie that Obama financed on Netflix. What's it called? Leave the World Behind, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
It,
that's another predictive programming stance right there.
yeah, and I think that there will be the biggest problem that will happen in this time period is that you won't know nobody's going to know what's going on. I mean, it's just going to be kind of chaotic. So,
Hmm.
um, and that I think that Satan will use that chaos and that confusion to introduce aliens or UFOs or some other crazy whatever, and that will be kind of just the kind of expected answer, like aliens took them or something. And I think that they'll actually manifest and appear, and I think it'll be much is as much evidence as we have today that these fallen angel technology is all over the place, whether we're talking about those orbs that were appearing everywhere, or there's a lot of just crazy bizarre stuff going on right now. But
Yeah,
it seems like it seems like 1 second after the rapture, man, it's everything is going to come apart, and it's going to be like just supernatural. Like the world will finally be like everybody's eyes will be open. Like, oh man, it's like there's demons, angels, like all kinds of crazy stuff. I don't know. That's how I see 1 second after the rapture. Do you think it'll be like that, or you think it's just going to be like chaos, lawlessness?
um my thought about this is some people are not even going to realize that we're out, that we're gone. Probably going to go about their day, and then all of a
Yeah,
sudden they're going to be like, what is going on? That's when all the chaos breaks loose. Because I think it'll be like a quiet moment, and then all of a sudden chaos just ensues itself. Like
yeah,
everything just starts really falling apart. I'm
yeah.
like, man, it's crazy to think about. I really don't know, but I mean, that's sometimes I think about that. Like when we disappear, people are just, friends and family, they're just going to keep on going about their day. Like, oh, they're not around. Okay. And, just keep moving forward. And then
Yeah,
all of a sudden, they're going to use the alien abduction thing when, all the Christians are gone. Because, that's, that's their whole thing. Oh, the aliens took them. See, we told you about those UFOs. They're really going to be pushing that.
yeah. You mentioned predictive programming. I mean, what happened
Mm-hmm.
right before Israel declared themselves a nation? But it was definitely like you could see there was movement in that direction. And obviously, Satan and his fallen angels can be they manifest everywhere and can be anywhere. They can be a fly on the wall in any room. um, they they knew Israel was about getting ready to declare themselves a nation. So what happens in July of 47 is Roswell, and then
Mm-hmm.
from Roswell we have this explosion of science fiction movies, and the whole genre is created. And ever since then, that has been the most, in my opinion, most heavily layered predictive programming you could see in any type of genre of movie. And a lot of that has to do with um, that we're not alone, that there are things out there that are not from God. They're not man. They're not animals. They're some other thing. And so that's been kind of the mindset, and that's all grown, just leaps and bounds from the X Files to Star Wars, Star Trek,
Independence
all of that.
Day.
Like, yeah. So I mean, it's just that to me has been some of the biggest predictive programming, and even in a scarily accurate way, like Minority Report.
Hmm.
Um, there's some other like 2001, the Odyssey, Space Odyssey, or whatever. There's been a lot of things that are like, man, that's like right now. Like that technology is like now. It's not science fiction anymore.
Mm-mm.
So,
It's right here in front
well,
of our very eyes, man. It's crazy
well, let's
stuff.
let's uh let's shift into the Q&A stuff. And do you have any closing thoughts on this idea, the collapse of Western civilization?
I mean, th- there's no stopping this collapse that's coming, but I just say we all need to be prepared spiritually. Um, we just need to grow closer to the Lord and just continue to share Jesus with people to make sure that, hey, they're going to be on that same page with us
Mm.
because we just have to be about our Father's business. And yeah, I know people are like, oh yeah, but you got to stock up with all this and that. Yeah, hey, stock up with stuff and leave it behind for those people that are going to need it. Like leave some Bibles behind. Uh, you
Yeah.
know, so like a rapture kit. Do it. Create a rapture kit because I'm telling you, it's going to happen faster than we've ever witnessed anything coming before.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. It's also kind of a weird dynamic to be in right now with uh how do you prepare? How do you prepare for something you don't know? You don't know when it's going to happen. You know you're in the season. Um you don't know exactly when it's going to happen, and you got to still make a living. You still got to pay the bills. You still got to deal with
Mhm.
relationships and family and coworkers and peers and neighbors, and you still got life is still going on. So how do you really get yourself ready? And I think you hit the nail on the head, being spiritually ready. The deception is coming
Amen.
so hard and so fast that you're not going to keep up. I'm telling you right now, because I can't keep up with the technology. Unless technology is your business, then like a Scott Townsend, you're not going to keep up with it. It's
Hmm.
just it's happening so quickly. So the levels of deception are increasing in orders of magnitude. I mean, Vin, I don't know if you remember remember those emails back in the day from the Nigerian prince. I have $50 billion and I just found out that you're a long lost relative and I need to have an American bank to deposit it into. Like you remember those scams that were all
Yes,
over the internet?
yes. I don't send you $50,000, my brother.
Yeah, just for helping me in this. I mean, think about that. That's obviously laughable now, but now, I mean, now the scams are so tricky and so I
Hmm.
mean, you won't even, they can change the voice. So you got somebody calling you from India and they sound like they're just Nancy Smith from down the road. Like
Hmm.
they
Hmm.
can clone voices and things like that. So it's definitely going to get harder and harder and harder. But the one thing that the world can't keep up with or even overpower is the Holy Spirit. So if you're
Amen.
born again, you're sealed by the Holy Spirit. You have a power inside of you that is, there's nothing in this world that can even come close to it, or in this reality. So
Yep.
we are far more powerful than we let on. We got to stop living like sheep and actually just be bold in our faith. And I'm not saying being bold and being belligerent about our faith, but you'll recognize when the time comes that there'll be a moment when you could speak up or say something, and you either do or you don't. And those are those moments where I think that we get the chance to be the salt and the light in this clearly you're right. We're coming to an end. Most empires,
Mm-hmm.
they only last about 250 years on average. So we're right. I think next year Trump wanted to celebrate
2026.
20. Is it? Yeah. Is it the 250th anniversary?
Yeah, yeah.
So okay. So Q&A time. These are for the mods. Thank you, mods, for what you do. I went back into Discord earlier and got a bunch of these questions that were in that you guys had saved in the Discord chat. Um, so I've got them here. I have about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have about 9 questions that I have um, ready to go. Vin, I don't know if you want to take any of these questions or not. You're more than
Hopefully they're
welcome
not
to. I'll give
difficult
you.
for me.
Well, and I couldn't find this one question, but I know Chief asked a question either last Monday or Saturday. But he is not pre-trib. So Chief is army is like I am. So we're combat brothers in arms, right?
Yeah.
Um, but he is convinced that and I since I couldn't find the question, I'm kind of paraphrasing it because I'm trying to get it in how he asked the question, like how I couldn't see the rapture wasn't in Revelation 11. And so I Revelation 11:15. So I'm going to read the passage, and if you want to take a swing at it, then I'll give you opportunity to do that. But I have some reasons why the rapture is not there. So here it is. Then the seventh angel sounded, and there were loud voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. And the 24 elders who sat before God on the thrones fell on their faces and worshiped God, saying, and then it goes on. But that's the seventh trumpet judgment. So have you heard that idea, the theory that the rapture is at the seventh trumpet?
Yes, I have, but there's nothing that validates that,
Yeah.
you know? I mean, what is it
Well,
after Revelation? What? Uh,
11.
that the church is not mentioned anymore?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
So,
I think somehow he might be tying into this idea that it's at the seventh trumpet, and there's this pronouncement at the seventh trumpet,
hmm,
which would maybe perhaps validate in his mind the First Corinthians 15 passage talking about the last trump. So if this is the last kind of trumpet, then obviously he this is where he is seeing that this is where the rapture takes place. There's a pronouncement, but here's some problems with this position. One is that Revelation 11, obviously, this is a time talking about a time inside of the 70th week itself, right?
mm-hmm.
So when you read Revelation and you go to chapter 1, verse 119, John is told how to write the book down by Jesus. He says, write the things you've seen, the things which are, and then the things which shall take place after these things. So the things which that John saw was he saw Christ, the glorified Christ, on the island right there, chapter 1. And he goes into great detail describing what Jesus looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is after he's fallen over, dead, and Christ restores him. But then he talks about the candlesticks and what they represent. So then we move into the things which are. So Revelation was given to John on or in 95 AD roughly. And so by now the church age has already been going for a good 60 years. And there are churches all over the old Roman Empire. There were all over Asia, moving into Europe. I mean, they were being planted in all over the place. So the church age is in full effect. And we see the church mentioned, the ecclesia, that word ecclesia in the Greek is used like 19 times in those first 3 chapters. And then it's not used again. It's so blatantly obvious that you don't want to make an argument from silence, but at the same time, when that silence is very definitive, and there's a clear mark of delineation from where it's mentioned super heavily and then it's not mentioned at all, that is a
Right.
clear delineation. Would you agree? Is that not
Oh yeah,
clear? I mean, it's clear to
absolutely,
me.
absolutely, absolutely. That speaks volumes right there. I mean, because I just don't see that happening at Revelation 11. I just don't see it. I don't see it,
And
and
then,
Scripture explains it very well.
yeah, well, then the next thing is the other point is that there's no transformation language. So when you read either First Thessalonians 4:13 through 18, or you're reading First Corinthians 15:51 through 56, I believe, there is this clear transformation language where the dead will rise first, and then those who are alive will be transformed from mortal to immortal. The dead will be raised incorruptible, et cetera, et cetera. That kind of language is used there, but it's not used at all here in Revelation 11.
Nope.
So if it's not used there at all in Revelation 11, we're just supposed to eisegete or put into the text all of these ideas about resurrection and transformation from mortal to immortal. You think that would be mentioned somewhere in that verse. You don't see it anywhere, and it's not even in the context of the whole chapter. Now
Nope.
there are the two witnesses that are caught up, but these two witnesses are two different individuals that have very distinct and defined roles inside of the 70th week in a very defined time period. So I've heard arguments where people say, well, the church is the saved Gentiles are one witness, and then the saved Jews are another witness. I'm like,
No.
you're putting so much into the text that it's not saying, that your view is already 1,000 times more ridiculous than
Because
just
the two
taking it for what it
witnesses,
says.
yeah, the two witnesses are going to be two men.
They're two men.
Yeah, two
They're not
men.
two camels. They're not two multitudes of billions of people. No, they're two men.
Two men.
There's a lot of symbolism used in Revelation, but there's also that symbolism is also given, it's always like almost always preceded by a simile, like something looks like a lion, or it looks like a this, or it looks like that. That's a simile. And it's saying that this thing is not the real thing, but it looks like this thing. So John is trying to
Mhm.
put it in words that he could describe it from a first century standpoint. But the
Yes.
symbolism isn't the thing itself. It's simply representing what John is seeing. He's giving us that symbolism, but there's no symbolism in these two witnesses.
Oh.
They're two men,
And the
and they
world's
have
going to watch
capable.
them fall and then
Yeah,
watch God call them up.
yeah. And then you have the earthly focus. So the passage in Revelation 11 is all about transferring the kingdom to the earth. But when you read John 14, where Jesus says, I'm going away, don't be sad, because I'm going to come back for you, and I'm going to take you to be where I am. Well, where's Jesus? He's at the right hand of the Father, right? So that's heaven. That's heaven speak
Yep,
right there.
10,000%, brother.
And so the idea now is that this is all about the kingdom coming back to the earth, but you still, according to the view of the mid-trib view, I guess, or whatever, they're still on the earth. So why would they need to go anywhere? And if God can protect them through the tribulation thus far, which that would argue against Revelation 13:7, but according to this view, the church is somehow protected through, but they're going to be delivered prior to the wrath of God, which they start around the midpoint and culminates with Armageddon. Well, my thing is, if he can protect them through the seal judgments, I mean, all the chaos and stuff from the rapture, the fallout, etc. If he can protect them from that, from the seal judgments, and now through six of the trumpet judgments, but somehow, or he's got to protect them through Armageddon. Like, that doesn't make any sense either.
No.
So okay, I'll keep going. Obviously, you already mentioned this, but the church is mentioned a lot of times at the beginning. It's not mentioned at all here. They're not in context.
Mhm.
There's no context. The context of this passage is judgment. It's not rescue.
Nope.
Now, I will say, to the point that it is the seventh trumpet, when we read First Corinthians 15, it says at the last trumpet. So, in my opinion, if there's a last trumpet, there has to be a first trumpet, right? And so,
Mhm.
when Paul was given this this is still 40 something years before Revelation was given. So he's not writing this with any idea of this being a trumpet of judgment. Now you can make the case that the trumpet there is referring to the order of that we see the trumpets being used in Leviticus, kind of how like you should play this blast for this, and then they're given the instructions for that, a call to war, assembly, whatnot. But to me, the only other trumpet that has any correlation to the rapture of the church is the trumpet blast that happens at Mount Sinai in Exodus 19.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. The Israelites had just come out of Egypt. They've been living there for 400 years, scattered, whatever. They didn't have a leader. They were just now they get over there. Now they are being led by Moses. They were led through the Red Sea. They come across, and now God is telling them to go before Mount Sinai. He's starting to give them instructions. Okay, you need to wait here 3 days. Do not, don't lay with your wife. There's all the ritual cleaning they got to do, and
Mm-hmm.
nobody can touch the mountain, right? And then in Exodus 19, this trumpet blast blows. I mean, whatever it sounds like. And people are freaking out. The mountain is shaking, it's smoking, it's on fire. It is the first time the nation of Israel has come together as a nation before God, right? This is the first
Mm-hmm.
time, all of them together before God.
Right.
And one man goes up and God comes down, right? So comes down to the top of the mountain and Moses goes up. And I know that we are not one man in the sense of whatever, but we are one body. We're one body. We're the body of Christ. We all are
Yep.
different parts and pieces and things like that, but like we're all one body. We
Yes.
go up. God comes down to he doesn't come all the way to the earth. Christ, we meet him in the air. And there's no war language. There's no fighting or, riding in white horses as an army or anything like that on either of the major rapture passages. But you do see that in the second coming passages. These are two
Mhm.
different events. They are not the same events. So
Yeah.
I to Chief, man, hey, much love to you. But I think there is no hint or whiff of rapture in this seventh trumpet. So I know the two witnesses are caught up. They are not. They are something separate. They aren't bodies of people or whatever. They're two men.
Yep. Two
They are
men.
caught up, and they're done that's done very intentionally too, in front of the entire world, right before things go really bad. So
Hey,
okay,
Pete, isn't it crazy like how that's gonna happen? And like all of this technology, like Starlink and everything is, being created. And the technology is gonna get a lot better to the point to where the world is gonna be able to see this happening all at once. That's
yes,
incredible, man.
yeah, which goes to the idea of like, will they see us at the rapture? And I'm kind of mixed on this. I know Don Perkins was the first guy that had mentioned the idea that what is that blink of an eye is the transformation, not necessarily us being snatched up.
Mm-hmm.
That we could be caught up in a more visible manner. I don't know. I'm kind of mixed on it. I think that would be cool. Like that would
That
be a
would
cool
be
way to go
cool.
out, you know. But I don't know if that's how it's going to be. But he's not the only one. But he was the first guy that I remember him talking about that. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, Vin, this one's for you. Question: the U.S. is going to take over the Gaza Strip. Would that make you kind of think that America will be one of the leaders of the revived Roman Empire?
I don't think America's going to take over the Gaza Strip
I agree.
because the Bible doesn't say that. I think it's going to be Israel that takes over the Gaza Strip. And oh man, where's that passage in the Bible where it talks about where that whole area is just going to be dealt with by Israel?
Yeah.
I just don't think America's going to take over Gaza. That's not going to happen.
Well, it's like Trump to say very bombastic things like that, but what he
Hmm.
does is he gets people moving in a direction once he says something to that effect, like, let's make Canada the next 51st state or whatever, or let's buy Greenland or whatever. He
Hmm.
says things and in a kind of a very bombastic, over the top way, but it brings all of the attention to whatever that thing is, whatever that issue is, and like where people wouldn't have talked about it before. So
Mm-hmm.
it's to me, it's strategic in why he said that because now he's getting all the Arab leaders scared and freaking out. So now they've got to do something. And basically, the rule is that you can keep Gaza or you can turn Gaza into something, but it's never going to be what it was.
That's right.
You can make it hotels, you can make it an industrial area, a shipping port, or whatever, but it's never going to be the home of the Palestinian state or whatever
No.
because they that's gone. That ship
Yeah.
sailed.
It's going to be
Anybody
all
talking
going to
about two-state solutions is they're still living in 2020.
yeah.
But
That ship sailed a long time ago. And to
mhm,
answer the other part of the question, of course, if America is still in existence, it's going to be very minimal, but it will be a part of the Club of Rome.
yeah.
As far as resources, yes. For the Club of Rome, yes, it will be very resourceful. This region.
Oh, Tom texted me and Tom Hughes said hi. Tell me to tell you
Oh,
hi.
Tommy!
uh, so he and I and Alex Newman will be speaking at the conference in Mississippi next May. So
Nice.
I'm very excited. Yeah. So at some point I'm going to need to bring on Alex Newman and I talked to him on the phone one time about a week and a half ago, 2
I've been
weeks.
interested in having him on too because he has a very good perspective on some things.
Oh man. Yeah. He is
Mm-hmm.
incredibly sharp. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And he and I have done some of the same. Well, he's obviously done a lot more, but I was involved in my school district, working through.
Mm-hmm.
This was about a year and a half ago, uh, before I went to Kentucky the first time, but doing all the curriculum that they're pushing through and trying to weed out any stuff that wasn't age appropriate or that had no business in there. So,
Mm. Wow,
but yeah, I
that
know you're
should be
passionate
fun.
about homeschooling and all that. We live in a pretty good district in terms of the teachers we have are pretty decent. I mean, the district is decent. They're pretty conservative district. I mean, so
Nice.
not ideal, but at the same time, it's better than most.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question from Jenny. Uh, Question: What do you think happens with children in the rapture? Will only children of the
Woo.
believers be taken, or all children? And to what age?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I know. Ah, children of believers, probably. I would say so.
Yeah.
Like up until the age of what? I'd say about. I don't know, but I know they'd be pretty young.
Yeah. I have a theory on it, but I don't. I mean, again, I tell people my theory, but I don't. It could be wrong. I mean, it seems logical and reasonable and biblical to me, but the Bible doesn't specifically say it. So, but
Mm-hmm.
if you read in Exodus 30, and then if you read in Leviticus, maybe it's Numbers. I think it's Numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I think 25, but it's talking about going into the promised land. So Exodus 30 talks about a ransom tax that everybody had to pay to atone for their sins, but if you only had to pay it if you were over the age of 20. And then in those that were allowed into the promised land were only those under the age of 20. So it's something unique about that age. And when science finally caught up to that, those statements in scripture, um, we've come to find out that the brain, as you're born, as you're, obviously as you're a baby, the first things you're learning to do is like sit up,
Mm-hmm.
crawl, maybe stand, then try and start to walk. Those are all your motor function skills. Those are all in the back of your head, the back of your brain. So
Mm-hmm.
those are motor functions, et cetera, which is why if you were, drinking alcohol, you can drink a lot of alcohol before you think you're drunk because it starts to impact the back of your brain, your motor function skills, which is why police officers try to get you to do the eye thing, or they try to stand on one foot or heel to toe, all that kind of stuff. because it's your motor functions, and that's what alcohol affects first, right?
Yeah, it makes you kind of
And
discombobulated.
by the time you've drank enough to where your front prefrontal cortex is all kind of like you can't think or talk or you're slurring and all that, then yes, I mean it's very very obvious. But
Mm-hmm.
that's why they go after those things first, because alcohol will impact the back of your brain first. But your prefrontal cortex, that's the last part of your brain that kind of comes together and develops. Now, that's kind of a misnomer because your brain develops all at the same time, and your brain also learns efficiency. So you don't have to think about tying your shoes. You know, once you learn a skill, you don't really have to think about it. You just keep doing it, and then it's just muscle memory, right? So your brain is not having to expend any energy thinking about tying your shoes. So your brain becomes efficient in that sense, right? Now,
Mm-hmm.
your prefrontal cortex is all shaped by your environment. It's all shaped by your education, your belief systems, your church, your family, friends, experiences, trauma, you know, positive things, victories in sports, etc. And that's why it takes the longest to develop, because you're still experiencing all these things and your mind's trying to process it. But biologically, your mind, your brain, and the average human does reach a kind of a maturity level around the age of 20 and older, say 20 to 25. So I think that's interesting that God created us that way. And what is our salvation based on? It's based on our ability to believe in the finished work of Christ.
Amen.
And I've heard two arguments against this. And one is that they'll tie the age of accountability to the bar mitzvah, which is like the age of 12 or 13, or the bat mitzvah for girls. And that's not in the Bible. That's a Jewish tradition that sprang up in like the Middle Ages, but that's not in the
Right.
Bible. It's not from the Torah or the Tanakh or anything else. It's that's just tradition that's come up since then,
Mm-hmm.
over thousands of years later. Um, there's that. So that's one thing that we can kind of discount right off the bat. And then number two is this idea of knowing right and wrong. So they're equating right and wrong with understanding why something is right or why it's wrong. A child at the age of 5 knows it's wrong to kick the cat or to slap their sister or whatever. They know deep down that they shouldn't do it, but they don't have the ability a lot of times to control that impulse, right? They just react to something. Well, even at the age of 10, right? You know the ability of right and wrong, but you don't understand the consequences of right and wrong, or else
No.
kids wouldn't do all the stupid things kids do. They do a lot of dumb things, and teenagers especially. I I I I should have died many times over, because I was doing,
Same
jumping
here.
off a
Same
cliff into a
here.
river. Yeah. So I don't equate salvation with the ability to understand right and wrong. I equate it more with the understanding of consequences for right and wrong, like why something is right or why it's wrong. When you get to that point, then I think you're able to make that decision. Now, that to say this, I think God defaults to save a child. So if a child does profess faith in Christ, like I did at a very young age, like 6, I believe, I
Mm-hmm.
walked down the aisle. I told them I wanted to pray for the animals, and they were like, there was missionaries from Africa at the time, and a little country church in Madisonville, Texas. I don't remember the year exactly. I was 6, so that was what,
44
maybe I
years
was
ago.
8. No, it was, well, I was thinking it was in like the early 80s, but
Yeah.
I walked the aisle. I think I was the only one that did. I don't remember that part, but I went down there, and they ended up telling me about the plan of salvation, why we need Jesus. And so we went through that, and I said, "Yeah, I want that." So I know I got saved at a young age, and I know kids can get saved at a young age. And I
Mm-hmm.
think God will default to save you at a young age. And you're his at that young age as a
Yeah.
child. And God is going to cash in on that. He gave me some free leash for a while, but then he yanked it back real hard. And I'm glad
Yep.
he did.
Yeah, me too.
But
Me too, bro. If he didn't, we wouldn't be sitting here talking right now.
no. But the point is that I think that God created us the way that He did. He could have created us like the minute that we were born, we could have been fully mentally mature,
Mm-hmm.
or we could have reached maturity at the age of 5. You know, He didn't. He built us this way, and this is how He designed us for us
Yeah.
to arrive at an age where the physical part of your body as well as your mind is kind of at the same point where you're not going to grow anymore, and now your mind is kind of where you should be, so it's kind of proportionate to where you are. So that, now again, the Bible doesn't specify anything specifically, and there's no age in the New Testament given. We know that Paul says that in Romans 7 that he understood the law, or he didn't, he was alive once, and then when he came to understand the law, he died. So I would have put that, him understanding the law, somewhere in his teens.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, I don't know enough about Paul's life to know exactly what year he was trained by what's his name, Galileo or whatever,
Yeah.
Galileo,
Galileo.
Gamaliel or something, I forget,
Yeah.
but a real famous Pharisee. And so whatever age that was for him, he came to understand the law. He died. He realized, hey, I need a savior. And it may
Mm-hmm.
be so that it may be different for different people too. Like, you may come to that conclusion of right and wrong and understanding it and really kind of getting it at a younger age.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe at that point you're responsible. So I'm not saying it's a hard 20. And this ties into the next question from Kathy. Hamas teaches their young kids to kill Jews. So if the age of accountability is 20, how can raping teenage Hamas be raptured? So I don't know. Do you want to lead on that, or you want me to lead on that?
Woo, man, that's a hot one. I'm gonna leave that one alone.
I'm gonna jump on that grenade. Um, okay, a couple things. One is that so we're gonna talk about examples of kids that have done terrible things. So it doesn't just have to be Hamas. It can be, I mean, the Columbine kids. I mean, there's any number of examples that we could use, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing is, first and foremost, is that we are all sinners. All of us are none of, I mean, we're all guilty before God. And none of our righteous acts mean anything. Like, they're like filthy rags to God. I mean, they're nasty. They don't even, we get all high and mighty and stuff when we compare ourselves to each other, but when we compare ourselves to God's holiness, none of us match up at all. So all of us are deserving of hell and eternal separation. Now we know that God provided a way through his son Christ, Jesus Christ, who died on the cross for our sins. And by accepting that free gift of salvation, believing it and trusting it that it is sufficient to pay for my sins, that I can't pay for them myself. And when I recognize that and come to that point in my life where I understand that that's how it has to be, then I am not going before God even with my own righteousness at that point. I'm covered by the blood of Christ. I'm covered by his righteousness, according to 2 Corinthians 5:17 through 21. And we trade basically our fallen sinful natures in the sight of God, and
Yep.
we're given the righteousness of God in that instance. Now, we still live in our bodies and we still struggle with the flesh and we still struggle with our fallen natures. And that's where that whole process of sanctification comes in. From the moment you get saved to the moment you either die or you're raptured, you're going through this process of sanctification, which is meant to be a maturing. Now, then I mean, you're not, I bet you're not the same Christian today that you were when you first became a Christian.
No way. By, by miles, by millions of miles, probably.
But you
Um,
grew, right? You
yeah.
grew in your faith.
Yep.
And
Grew by leaps and bounds and still growing.
that's the process that we go through. Now, if I'm going to be consistent with my previous answer, then I would say that you have kids that do horrible and terrible things that don't understand why they're doing them.
Hmm.
They just believe that it's right because that's what their mom and dad does, or because that's what their culture teaches them, or their religion. And so they go into these things as blind, as brainwashed as an adult would be. That's spent 20 years in Scientology. I mean, it's the excuse that they have is they just don't understand. I mean, and God, look, God, if God, one of his attributes is that he is absolutely perfectly fair. Now, fair would mean that none of us go to heaven,
Hmm.
right? I mean, that would be
Right,
fair.
right, yeah.
Or fair that he provides a way for us, that we don't go in our own merit, but we go in on the merit of his one and only son, the begotten son who died on the cross for us.
Absolutely.
That's also fair. It's not fair to God because he's giving up everything and he's getting so little back in terms of us. I mean, we're fallen, sinful creatures, but
Yeah.
that's how he decided to do it, and wanted that's what he wanted. He loves us and he wants to do that, and he wants us to be there because we want to be there, not because we're compelled to be there. But with regard to children who do terrible things, I still hold to the same thing, that they may understand right and wrong, but they don't understand why things are right or why things are wrong, and they will
Mhm.
do things without compulsion, or they'll do things with compulsion, or they'll do it just without thinking it through. I mean, at 16, I was an idiot. I was an absolute moron. Like, I would just do the dumbest things because I thought I knew everything, and I didn't know anything.
That's when we were
And
still
obviously, that
green, bro.
what?
That's when we were still green.
Yeah, yeah. So I would just ask everybody in the audience just to think back to when you were 16. Think about how smart you thought you were, and now how smart you think you are now compared to how smart you were then. I think we could all see it in our own lives, and I don't know. Okay, let's keep going because I'll keep talking about the same thing forever. I need to do a whole program on it. Let's see. Is God's promise in Genesis 15:5 literal? Say there are 700 million that make up the church, and science says there are approximately 200 billion stars, or T stars. It means every believer will have about 3 million subjects in each kingdom. Genesis 15:5. I gotta go back and read that. So I know it's the covenant there with
Yeah,
Abraham.
while you're doing that, I'm gonna fix my microphone.
Oh, okay. Let's see, Genesis 15:5. It says, God. Then God brought him outside and said, "Look now toward heaven and count the stars, if you are able to number them." And he said, "So shall your descendants be." So yeah, I do take that literal, but I think that there's far more stars than 200 billion. Uh, I would. We really don't know how many stars there are, but there's more than that. Um, we know in Scripture that large numbers can be explained with the idea of myriads and myriads, and but in Revelation, I want to say it's Revelation 8 when it talks about the horsemen. No, Revelation 9 talking about the horsemen. He said there's this army that was 200 million horsemen or soldiers, demonic entities, whatever they are. And so he mentions that number, but then he mentions in Revelation 7, John is being talking to an elder, and they're looking at all the saints before the throne, and it says they're innumerable, like they couldn't count the number. So that number has to be greater than the army of 200 million. So I think with angels, there are, oh man, there are so many angels, and there are more angels than there are stars, and a third of those are now a third of those angels have fallen with Lucifer. The other two thirds are with the holy host of heaven, the holy angels. So all that to say that I feel like there is way more people. like even going into the kingdom age. So if the idea that we're going to rule and reign with Christ, and that according to what we did in this life, in this period of sanctification, like how faithful we were with the gifts God gave us, to use those to his furtherance of his kingdom by bringing other people in, we could be in charge of these like major areas that are like 500 million people or something. It made some crazy number each. Could be more than that. I don't know. But we know that even how few people, excuse me, how how few people enter into the kingdom in their physical bodies at the end of the tribulation. It's not going to be a lot of people. I think it may be a smattering of just each kind of ethnic group that survive in, plus the Jews, the 1/3 of the Jewish people that are saved, the remnant. But if we remember back to Noah, I mean, he started out with 8 people, really six, the Noah's sons and their wives. And then if you go back to Adam and Eve, 2 people. So God can rebuild the human race with just a small number of people. But I think at the end of the tribulation, it's going to be a handful of people,
Right.
and that will kickstart the repopulation of the earth. Which by the end of the millennium, I mean, you're talking about people having babies for 1,000 years straight, and they're living for hundreds of years. Who knows how many kids they can have? Like, it's going to be a crazy number. Um, I'll be a janitor somewhere sweeping a mop or doing something. I don't, I don't know what you'll be doing, but I'm going to be sweeping or mopping.
We're gonna have some kind of gig, right?
Yeah. Okay. Let me take one more and then I got to go because it is now 10:30. And what time is it there for you? It's what, 8:30 or 7:30?
Yeah, it's 7:28 right now.
7:28. Sandstone, question. What about the folks that attend churches such as JO in Texas? I don't know what JO is. I don't know if that meant Jehovah Witnesses or you know what JO is?
J
Religion
O
or
J O. Oh,
church?
Joel Osteen, Smiling
Oh,
Joe.
oh, oh, Joe Osteen. Okay, that makes sense. What about the folks that attend churches such as Joel Osteen's in Texas? Will the pastors or individuals be responsible for not watching? Yes, pastors especially, and teachers,
Yep.
and people that teach things about the Bible. They're going to be held at a higher I'll be held at a higher standard than just the average Joe that's out there. And I would look at a guy like Joel Osteen, especially. Well, he's not going. I can't say he's not because I don't know his heart, but just judging the fruits of his labor and the efforts and stuff, I would say
Yeah.
he's not a Christian.
I call him Tony
So he
Robbins Jr. that holds a Bible.
would, yeah, he does. He's got that big old smile like him too. But uh, okay. Any closing comments, Vin? Because I'm going to give it to you to close it out if you
Man,
want.
first of all, Pete, thanks for having me on. Thanks for shouting me out, saying hi to me, Tom. I'll see you in June in Phoenix. It's going to be a
Yes.
fun conference to be at in Phoenix. Um, but everybody, Pete and I are just, trying to connect the dots. I mean, we're making an effort here to try and help you guys to understand the things that are to come and how we got here. But at the end of the day, it's all about following Jesus. And that's what we should be doing. We should be holding that close to our vest, putting on the breastplate of righteousness. Um, just, loving on others who need it. Because I'm telling you, we're living in such a time right now to where people are just falling for everything. They're looking for something to cling on to. And we have that gift that they desire. And they don't even know that they desire that gift. So, that ultimate gift that we have, that we were blessed to have, we should be sharing that with others and stop holding back because you always want to hear those wonderful words when we're done. Well done, good and faithful servant. We all desire to hear those words, right? So let's all just be firm in our beliefs, be bold, share our faith. because there's going to be opportunities where those doors are going to be opened when you're in public in different places, and sometimes we'll miss it. I've missed out on witnessing to people in certain spots at points in my life, and I learned from that. I'm like, man, when the next time that door opens, I'm going to share with them, because God doesn't want a lot of people to perish. So let's be real vigilant in sharing our faith out there.
That's awesome. Yeah. Hey, and just well, thanks for being on tonight. And definitely, I need to get on your program. And
Yes.
we'll shoot for June, sometime in June.
Yeah,
So,
it's mandatory too, Pete. It's mandatory.
um, I just think with all the tornadoes that we've had here this last weekend,
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know how many there's been at least a dozen, and out of those, probably three or four that were EF3s, and one that was an EF4, or will probably be declared as an EF4. But
Right.
one of the things that as I'm walking through those neighborhoods that used to be there, and I'm thinking like, how can you prepare for a tornado? Well, you can't, because they happen, so you don't know, they're so unpredictable in what they're going to do. Now, I'm not saying you can't be prepared. There's no real way to plan for one, is I guess I'm trying to say. What you can do though is be prepared ahead of time. And if you live in an area where you can have a storm shelter, I mean that's obviously something that you would prepare beforehand, and just use it in the case of when that day comes. You have it to use it. You have the ability to listen and pay attention and listen to the weather forecast.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a ton of channels now on YouTube that all they do is just talk about major weather. So you're not having to simply wait on the TV or whatever. You can kind of get it wherever you are now. But it's people that pay attention to the weather that know what's going on with the weather, and they generally are more prepared for what's coming than people that aren't paying attention. And it's really it. I mean, you get some stuff together, you get a place to go to, a safe place, you have a plan with your family. Hey, if this happens, this is what we're going to do. You're going to put your shoes on, you're going to grab a blanket, a helmet, whatever. We're going to go to the strongest part of the house, away from windows, blah blah blah. And you talk about those things ahead of time, and it's so similar to what we're doing. Then, like, we're warning people about what's coming. Now, I would liken this group here to be folks that are weather watchers. You guys pay attention to what's going on with the weather. And in the case of this whole, my channel, my purpose for being online is to warn people about the spiritual weather that's coming. There's a giant storm coming, and you don't want to be here for it. You're not going to survive it. You're not going to make, you're not going to power through it on your beanie weenies in your hidey hole, wherever you go, underground to. You're
Mm-hmm.
not going to survive the storm that's coming. And so every week we talk about these subjects. We keep these subjects alive because people need to talk about it, because they're not getting this stuff in churches.
Yeah,
I
you're
think
right.
Brandon Holt, I think Brandon Holthouse said, I think he was the one that said that was like 2% of churches in America are pulpits are talking about in a healthy way, like the rapture of the church, second coming,
Mm-hmm.
all that.
Yeah.
It's a small number, whatever percentage, whatever it is. So, but we talk about it. We keep people aware that this is still going to happen. We don't know exactly when it's going to happen, just like a tornado, but the conditions are right. The conditions are right.
Yeah.
The weather is right.
Mm-hmm.
The global geopolitics is right. The technology is right. All these conditions are right for
Yeah.
this massive storm to begin.
And you know
And
what? May I add one more thing? One more thing. Just one more
sure,
thing. I
sure.
sound like Columbo right now. Just one more thing. um, folks, share Pete's channel and other channels like his and Lauren's. And Lauren gives you a lot of props because she said that you gave her a boost, man, to go forward and start, sharing truth out there. And she's doing a phenomenal job too, bro. And
She
I,
is.
I think it's awesome. And I'm glad that we're all in this fight together. It's awesome. I think the Lord is like knitting all of the people together that he knows that's going to fight the good fight to finish this race. that He has us on.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. Somebody in the chat, let's see, we fly soon, sister said, I think that the reason we're getting hit with all this tragedy in America with the weather is because of the sin of our country is in.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. And I think I would even go so far as to say is our meddling with the Middle East is
Yep.
probably, I know Bill Koenig will probably come out with some new updated thing for his eye to eye program that he documents all the times we kind of mess with Israel and then something happens to us. So we may not be messing with Israel directly, but we may be doing things behind the scenes, making deals that somehow
Mhm.
disadvantages Israel to some degree or another. And if that's the case, then this is certainly as warranted as Hurricane Katrina was when we kicked it, talked Israel into kicking all the Jews out of Gaza. So
Yeah.
to me, it's like we're doing something that's not good, and it's being expressed now in this insane amount of tornadoes, and it's gonna go right into hurricane season. I mean, it's just, we don't even get a break anymore. It goes from one kind of disaster season to the next disaster season.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, thank you guys for being here tonight. Thank you, moderators. I will be on Wednesday night to take all the questions that you gathered tonight, and then the remainder of the questions that I didn't answer from this other list. And I will only be doing Q&A Wednesday night. So we'll just have at it. I'll try and knock it out, and then I will be offline for I don't know, was it 9 days, 7 days? No, it's
Nice.
8 days. So yeah, it'd be nice. No, yeah, somewhere in there. That'll be a nice break. So
Mhm. And I'll see you
thank
guys
you guys.
tomorrow.
Yep. All right. God bless you. Take care, Maranatha, and we'll talk to you guys soon.